Hi, and welcome back to Continual. Tonight I've been shanghaied and brought aboard a ship full of these lassies. We're here to talk about This Flag Means Death, and I feel sure before the night is over, well, I'll be walking a plank or two. But before we go too far down the path, I'm your host, Jim Nettles. Let's see who all has brought me aboard this ship. Tanya, you're up first.
Hi, my name is Tanya Cook. I use she, they pronouns, and it's our flag means death, not that this, but just a
Well,
small correction. Yeah, so first
again,
offense.
I'm a heathen. I'm the
Um,
only one here who's never seen it. I suck. And I can read
no,
this.
no worries. And I teach sociology near Denver, Colorado, and I also research fandom, especially fan activism. So I'm sure we will get into that tonight.
Laura?
Hi, my name is Laura Duncombe. I am a pirate historian, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I am absolutely delighted to be here.
Hansi?
I'm Hansi Oppenheimer of Squee Projects. I've been studying fandom for about a couple of decades, and I advocated for this panel, so I'm a huge fan.
Diana?
I'm Diana Peterfreund. I'm a novelist. I have written books about many things, but not pirates. But I deeply love Our Flag Means Death, and I'm so excited to be here and support all of these learned and activist people.
So, as is obvious, as I came in with the preface, spoilers shall abound, and it shall be ruined for those who are not those fans, including probably myself. But this is probably the only way I'm actually going to prioritize it to get to see the show now that it's being canceled. Oh, spoilers. So I wanted to start with you guys. Tanya, what brought you to the show initially?
Oh, wow. Good question. I think I was traveling. I was actually at an academic conference and we were looking for a new show. And I thought, oh, I just randomly saw this show and thought, I love New Zealand comedy. I loved What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, which just hit its 10-year anniversary. Also like the show. I figure I'll give this weird pirate show a try. And I don't think I fell in love with it until the episode where they go to the fancy party. And at that point, I was like, all right, I have the cosplay. Let's do it. So that drew me. I love anything comedic, and anything that's going to have diverse representation in many, many different ways, I appreciate.
Laura?
Being a professional pirate type person, this show was recommended fervently and aggressively to me, and I actually sort of put it off because the pictures of it made it look like they were going to maybe make fun of piracy or be sort of like hyper macho aggressive posturing, like just I don't know, the first picture kind of did it a disservice in my mind. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just give it a go, because being a pirate person, someone's going to ask me what I think about this at some point. And I was not sold until Bleackbeard rolls in. And then I was just little by little, I feel like the net closed around me from like, oh, this is funny, to like, oh, this is good, to like, oh no, this is my whole personality now. Oh no, I'm trapped here forever. So
Yes. I think I was one of the people who was like, Laura, have you seen it? Have you seen it, Laura? Have you seen it?
I was probably one of those people. Have you seen it? Have you seen it?
All right, Hansi. Since you recommended we do this one, what brought you to the show?
Taika Waititi. I'm a huge fan of him since the original documentary, What We Do in the Shadows. And then Jojo Rabbit, I thought was incredible. And, as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, that movie really meant something to me. I felt it was really powerful. And then I started looking at his other work. And then this, and then I discovered Rhys Darby, and then Flight of the Conchords. And yeah, it's New Zealand. I, in fact, have named my apartment New Squealand.
All right, Diana, what brought you to the show?
Well, despite being like a big fan of the New Zealand humor and Taika and Reese and all of these things, like it just was not on my radar at all. I don't think I even had HBO Max. And I just started seeing people talking about it online, and they called it the gay pirate show. But I've been burned many times before when someone tells me, oh, this is the gay this or this is the gay that. And so I put it on, and I remember like I was like live tweeting or making a Facebook post during the first episode and being like, what do you mean these sailors can't sew? Every sailor I know can sew. Like I was being really like, very sarcastic about it. And then I think it's at the end of the second episode, I want to say, where Bleackbeard appears and saves them, like their ship is in trouble. And he's sitting by Stede's bedside because Stede has been stabbed. And as a romance writer, I know where all the gears are in the back of a romance story, right? Like there's the meet cute, and there's the, like, oh, nobody can touch this gruff, dark, brooding person except for the one person that he's got like a tenderness for. And I'm sitting there looking at that, and I'm like, is this an accident? Like, what am I watching here? Like, what am I watching here? And then like, in the next episode, they did like the next beat of a romance. And in the next episode, they did the next beat of a romance. And I kept watching that happen and being like, no, this is a romance. Like, this is actually a romance. And it wasn't until I'd watched the whole season and, we got to where we got in the romance story that I was like, they're not messing with us. They're not teasing us. They told us from like the first episode where everyone's like, I don't know what to think about Stede, who says he's like the best pirate ever. And Bleackbeard's like brooding. He's like smoking a pipe or something. And I'm like, it was always the romance. Like from the get-go.
But it's more than it's more.
No. Well,
I mean,
I don't think I am not saying that. I mean, I'm a romance novelist, so I'm not.
I'm agreeing with you. It absolutely is a romance story,
for sure. But it's so rare that story is told, and that they come out of the gate, guns blazing, and like, we're gonna tell this love story about two pirates. And then I went and read this article with David Jenkins, the creator of the show, and he said, "Listen, I read this history book about the two of them, like the real people." They sailed together, then they got in a big fight, and they separated, and nobody knows why. And he was like, and because nobody knows why, I can make up whatever I want. And I was like, do it, man. I'm so into this fanfic. Like, just go for it. So that was me.
So Laura,
yes,
as the historian, I'm going to put you on the spot here. As the historian, what are your thoughts on the show and how it presents just sort of the history and the story of it?
I mean, Diana is right in that we really don't know why they split up. It's a bizarre story. I mean, it's a wealthy guy. He's got everything in the world going for him, and just decides, I'm going to go become a pirate, and then like accidentally runs into, at the time, like the most fearsome pirate in the area, and this infamous pirate. And then they have this like partnership that goes wrong. And then, spoiler alert for something that happened in 1720, they both end up dead. Right. So it's like, you really don't know. And I remember telling my husband very early on, like, this could have been what happened. There's no reason why this isn't what happened. So, I mean, it's very cheeky, right? I mean, Oluwande's wearing Crocs. Like, I mean, it's not pretending to be historical, but I think, the bones of the history are there, and there's nothing, I would say, with the exception of My Girl Chingy Sao in season 2, there's nothing that really I found like so wrong as to be like offensive in terms of like what really matters. Like, the costuming is silly, the language is silly, some of the sailing stuff is silly, and that's fine. But in terms of like the heart of the story, I think it's all there. Which is part of what makes it so much fun.
Yeah, it did not happen.
Right, yeah. We don't know.
So Hansi, I'm gonna throw this into you. So for the series, being the film, being the lover of film that you are, what what brought to you, I mean, in terms of scene and setup and just how it's produced and put together, what is it for you about the series that just grabs you and holds you?
Well, there's two aspects. So visually, it is just stunning. It is so beautiful. The costumes are so beautiful. The people are so beautiful. And the diversity of these beautiful people is wonderful too. But I also love there's this level on which it's like meta, because, that's always going to be where I jump in, right? So they are like subverting a lot of like pirate stories. Like there's this ridiculous scene when Bleackbeard comes onto Stede's ship, and he comes on like this really short little rope, like swinging on this little tiny rope, and then everyone's like, "Oh, so glad to meet you. Huge fan, sir. Huge fan," and he's kind of like bowing, and so ridiculous, but so charming.
So Diana, I'm going to throw it to you from the story standpoint. Now you've already kind of dissected the fact that it's a romance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, how's the story for you?
I mean, I think the story is delightful because, like as Hansi was saying, it is a romance, but there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of found family happening there because, especially in the first season, you see Jim's story and their quest for revenge. And Jim is one of the sailors on the ship. They're Latinx. They're
non-binary.
They're non-binary, and they their family was murdered when they were young, and they spent their life becoming an assassin with the intent on getting revenge. And now they're on the ship Revenge, and they're trying to fulfill their goal, but like it's not as emotionally fulfilling as they hoped, and instead they're finding a lot of emotional fulfillment with so this is them. That's Jim up there. Whoop.
And Olawande.
And then the darker skinned one, that's Olawande, who is like Jim's best friend and sometime lover. And, it's just this, there are like 4 or 5, like there are like 3 at least four couples, like that you kind of, over the course of the, and like a lot of the other sailors do form relationships with each other and form, there are all these kind of beautiful side romances that are happening, and then just sort of like friendships too that are really, it's also like a reunion of like a whole bunch of like Game of Thrones like minor characters. There's like 3 of them on there. It's like it's really fun to watch.
Which is not without, of course, historical precedent. I mean, the concept of matelotage, of pirates being able to link their fortunes together and, give each other survivorship benefits, which, we don't even have today in, many like cases. But that was alive and well during the Golden Age. And so not all of those partnerships were romantic, but a lot of them were. And it is amazing. There's a lot of these pirates who, have platonic relationships, but then there are other pirates who have these really, really strong, non-romantic relationships that are just as deep. And so, everyone is connected to each other in different ways in this web, the whole crew of the Revenge. And that grows and changes in season 2 in like really beautiful ways. And you get to see, I was watching some of season 2 last night, and just the Jim of season 2 is almost unrecognizable from the Jim of season 1. And it's because they've found these people with whom they can be themselves. And it's just sort of this relaxed, like comfortable, confident. And I think all of these pirates get to sort of become their best selves because they are accepted for who they are. And I think you talk about meta, that's sort of I think that's why it's resonated with so many people, because all of us lovely, quirky outcasts have sort of found a fandom that accepts us for who we are. And I think some people have found acceptance for the very first time. These are, Ed and Stede are these middle-aged gay men, who just for the first time for Stede, finds a place where he feels like he can be himself. And I think I've heard story upon story upon story of people finding the courage to live their authentic life after seeing it on screen. It represents a lot of stories and people that I have never seen before in this combination. And it's really wonderful. It's just magical.
And no one ever questions anyone being gay. It's just, like it's not, there's no big coming out scenes, none of that drama. Everybody's just doing their own thing.
Yeah, it also keeps making really kind choices. Like every time the story could make a lazy choice or a flat choice, they decide to be like, who is this person and why are they the way they are? So like Stede leaves his wife. He has a wife and children, and he leaves them to go to the high seas. And like in a lazy story, they might be like, oh, his wife Mary, like she was a harridan, like she was a witch, she was not a good person. But instead, you find out that like Mary is a good person and she was trying as hard as she could to like make their lives work, and that it was not easy on her, when he left. And so she becomes this like amazingly fascinating character in her own right, because she's not no one and she's not like a stereotype. She's a full human being who has dreams and desires and duties of her own.
So Tanya, I'm going to hit you with this one, since this is kind of your area, because I want to dive into the fandom here in a couple of minutes. But, in terms of just cultural importance, because there's a lot of things I've heard about this show, over the last couple of years. Again, it's just, it's in the long list of things I haven't gotten to. But from a cultural importance standpoint, before we dive into it, what is it from your perspective that's going to be the legacy of this? And if they find a way to get somebody else to pick it up?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I will
not if.
Yeah. For sure. We will just create a pirate network to make season 3 if we have to. But yeah, I appreciate that question, and everyone's kind of alluded to it. What I look for in a fan response to a show is that found family variable. You mentioned the fact that I don't know how to pronounce it right, but pirates can marry each other and have two people of the same gender can marry one another, etc. So I think the intersectionality and the diversity is what resonates with folks. And I'm going to cite queer joy, which my writing partner Kayla talks about a lot, because this story, unlike so many, yes, there's conflict, yes, there's tragedy, but it's not about that person's identity per se. And it ends up being a very joyful story. And I think that connected extremely deeply with folks in the summer of 2022 when this came out, because that was also the summer Roe v. Wade was overturned, and there were some perceived going backwards on feminist and queer rights initiatives. So the queer joy, the way that folks see themselves in a way that they've not seen themselves. A lot of queer folks also have been excluded by their family of origin or by their friends for their identities. So to find a fandom that's accepting, to see that represented, right? And nobody marginalizes or excludes anyone for their identity. The bad guys on the show are all cis, white, het colonizers, right? And I think that's also very important. I wrote down while y'all were talking, revenge. The ship is called the Revenge. Who are we getting revenge against? Society. Social structures and social institutions, not to be too first-year grad student about it, okay? But like it's very much we're getting revenge on these structures that have kept us from living as our authentic selves. And then I think Mary's story is showing that although it's portrayed as widowdom, divorce can be good. Mm-hmm. Divorce can be a positive thing, especially when it's a relationship that's not fulfilling for either one. Stede's action was really dramatic, but you can't argue with the idea that something needed to change.
I mean, she knows she's not a widow, right? She knows he needs to die.
Yeah, and I think she does that to be socially acceptable, right? To be able to have the life that she creates for herself, which I think is also really interesting. And so I'll just share very quickly a personal story. For me, this show affected me. Like, I'm a researcher, I'm an academic, I look at things from a distance, but I actually came out at a Comic-Con panel about this show. So I came out as non-binary. I've started to myself seeing Jim and Olawande's relationship. Something just clicked. I'm getting close to 50, y'all. So like it's my bedtime in about 10 minutes. But it's, so seeing these folks who are my age roughly go through this, be competent and also be a mess. I love that too. And that's what resonated for me with Stede, is like he's having this huge crisis and he's also competent in other ways and in different ways. he's masculine in different ways than we might connect with. So I came out as non-binary. I've since understood other things about myself, that yes, I am not just a really great ally to the queer community, but I'm one of y'all too. So it's that kind of validated that for me, and connected. And I'm not the only person, I think, who has gone through fandom and these stories and seen that recognition in themselves.
Well, and it kind of leads to where I want to go to, because I want to come back and talk about the story, right? I want to talk about the characters. But I think that there's an importance here about talking just in general about the fandom, right? Because it's like anything else. A fandom that finds meaning and importance and community out of anything is always important, right? Because it binds people together in a very unique way, no matter what that fandom is. So Hansi, I kind of want to start this with you and this notion of the fandom. What is it for you about the fandom? For you, what is it part of your love, and what is it you hope the fandom can do to save the show?
The fandom is amazing. I started dressing as No Beard. Well, I first started doing Stede Bonnet. And then I did No Beard, because I'm definitely more of a Bleackbeard. And while I was doing that, the first time I dressed as No Beard, and I'm going down an escalator, there was someone dressed, a woman dressed, a non-binary woman, I don't know, dressed as Stede, going the other direction on the elevator, and I yelled, "Darling, wait for me!" And I ran up the escalator, went up to her, and we hugged and took a picture. And it was just that moment of recognition. Like, I don't know, that fandom is so embracing. I think because we are all outcasts, so we just want to make everyone feel included. And when we did the big meetup shoot at DragonCon, it was just amazing. Like, people were like yelling, like, we're looking very non-heterosexual today, and everyone was just having a blast. It just warms my heart.
Diana?
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Laura.
Well, something that's, come on, queer people have always been a part of fandom. I was part of the Sherlock fandom kind of, and immediately before in the Raylo fandom. And, those are places where it's sometimes hard to be your authentic self, and I think little pockets of Raylos in Star Wars are despised by a big swath of the other Star Wars fandom. And so it's queer people have always had a place in fandom, but I have never been a part of a fandom where you don't have to be careful about expressing yourself and who you are and what you love. And it's just so different. I mean, when I was watching the show, I think coming off of Sherlock, which, BBC Sherlock, which felt like a romance and hit romance beats and then totally screwed you in the end. I was so skeptical until the boys were actually kissing that I was like, oh no, this is for real. We are doing this for real. And you were
like, Lucius, you're like, this is happening.
I was just like that. Who is it? Nathan Fode. What's his character's name?
Lucius.
When he was like, this is happening, I was saying it to the screen at the same time as he was saying it.
Yeah, it was so, you're so nervous. And I was so nervous for so long because so many times you get queer baited. And then this show was just so unapologetically, lushly romantic and super queer. And it's just amazing to be, I think that the people who find that attractive are awesome people. And that's why this fandom is so uniquely awesome, because you don't have to be afraid that there are other sections of the fandom that don't like you. And
they're not going to tell you you're imagining it, because anything that any fan has imagined, the cast has stuck an Easter egg in there. So there's characters kissing, but then they could also argue, you're like, well, there was obviously something going on with Izzy and Bleackbeard. That is a long history, and So you could make any argument you wanted and no one could tell you no.
That was my first thought with season 2. The very first opening scenes was like, oh, the writers have been reading and looking at fan art and reading some of the fic. And it's so funny to have, we're like fanfic inception at this point because the show itself is fan fiction, right? Just wanted to like get that one in there. But yeah, I also was like, they're hitting all these beats, but because we've seen queer baiting or we've seen these things turn into, oh no, they're not. No, they're 5 feet apart because they're not gay, kind of thing. Whatever. We've seen that so many times that I think fans did not invest in the show until that was confirmed. And then people were reassuring them, oh no, it's not just that we're reading that subtext. It's that subtext is not subtext. Right. Yeah, it's confirmed.
Text, yeah.
I definitely had to tell people that because I was like, it's a gay pirate show. And they're like, how gay is it? I was like, it is a gay pirate show.
And I know we're PG-13, but they now, fun fact, in the last week, they've gotten at least the social media manager at Astroglide to join the crew.
Ads.
Right, which is just kind of been hilarious to watch that interaction. And by the way, I'm muting myself because my buttons are loud.
Did you guys see the Twitter thing where somebody had like focused in on the curtain when Stede pulls the curtain and like what's happening behind the curtain as he like pulls the curtain when he and Ed like retire to their room? Like there was a whole thing on Twitter with like hundreds of responses of like who was lying down when, like, because it's like kind of like the sun is through the curtain. I mean, the fans of Our Flag Means Death have done more like frame examining than I think Raylo's even. Like, honestly.
That's probably true.
Yeah. Well, the fan art has been great too.
Yeah, so beautiful.
And I would be
like Bleackbeard Bar and Grill shirt.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I just wanted to say, like, that's what impresses me about the fandom. And when I look at fandom, this was not unexpected for me, having researched this, looking at when you get a group of people together who love something and share that identity piece, they become almost like pre-activists, right? And all it takes is somebody to kind of focus them in the right direction. I just want to shout out for fans too and say, not only are they running this huge Save the Show campaign, but they've been doing charity work since the beginning of the fandom, and you've been able to watch that in real time. So they've done all kinds of things. One fun thing that I've seen and participated in, not as a as a comic, not as a performer, because I'm not good at dancing and stuff. But anyway, is drag shows in honor of the show and themed around our flag, and they're amazing. And they typically take them whatever money they raise and donate it to some kind of charity organization, local or national, usually a local one. And that's happening all over the country. I know of at least 5 or 6 of those, and then other online events and fandom events. So you're going to continue to see that, I think, and just want to shout out that fundraising and charitable initiative is there beyond the efforts to get the show saved, which are impressive. Don't get me wrong.
Well, we're protecting what we love, right? I mean, if I can borrow from a Raylo rallying cry, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the utter unique circumstance of the showrunners and actors being in to the fan response, including fan art, including fan fiction. Like, again, with Sherlock, it was right, like, oh, that's disgusting. Yeah, what are you dirty perverts doing on the internet? And then now Taika's like liking fan art and like looking at these like explicit paintings of Bleackbeard and Stede and like loving it. And the whole cast is just really in.
Saba Shoot is like next level. He plays the cook on the ship, and he just like, I feel like it's his full-time job to be like a professional Our Flag Means Death fanboy.
Well, and this is one of the things I have seen a fair amount of, right? Is the way that cast, crew, production is embracing and allowing for fan art, fan creativity to really create that, right? Because this is one of those things that when you dance on those lines, it's a question of what does it do for the community? What does it do for that fan base? And how do you manage the IP side of it, right?
Yeah, so do you guys think that is it because it's fanfic to start with? What do you guys think about that?
I think it's because, well, plug, I'm writing a book about this. Our second book, and Hansi's contributing chapters about how this particular product has reinvigorated fan creativity. I think it's because it's joyful and it's positive, and it got a lot of people who used to do art, like especially you mentioned, oh my God, Sherlock, right? A lot of the Super Hulock folks who grew up on Tumblr in the tens, I don't even know what we call that decade, right? They're now coming to this show and finding resonance, and like that's reconnecting with that nostalgic part of them, and it gives them a place to kind of resist things like She Who Must Not Be Named from a certain book series that we're not going to talk about, right? And I'll just say it that way, but this is a place for people to connect to, get validation, find themselves, just engage in the joy. And it's people, so there's always politics, right? I'm not Pollyanna about this. There's definitely some political maneuvering, but I think that just seeing yourself on the show, seeing a bunch of weirdos have a great time together and come to love each other is something we can all connect with, hopefully, in an ideal world. And so anybody who feels like they've been ostracized or marginalized and finding themselves in this, that's why it's hit so close to home for folks, and it's reignited or like re-sparked that creativity.
So
I'd say more. I'll shut up. But
oh no, I was going to say, but I think that's part of it, because again, when you look at the way different IP holders, different creators, different people treat the notion of fandom and how they handle their fans and how they, if they respect their fandoms and love their fans or not, because I think this is one of the big challenges, right? Is how close are certain studios, close are certain people to this? And I think this also leads to the political side of what shows get renewed, what shows don't.
And why was it canceled like so suddenly and strangely? Because, they had plans, Jenkins had planned for 3 seasons and the actors were all in, everything. And then suddenly it's canceled. So there was some talk of insider trading that may have led to
well, and for good, bad, and ugly, the writer strikes are definitively impacting a lot of things this year.
They did do it for sure, and the second felt like they packed so much in. I felt like that could have been 2 seasons.
So I mean,
I mean, it's tough because sometimes the money just falls through. Like, I mean,
right.
I've seen shows that like the seasons were written, they were ready to shoot, and then just like some producer or some bit of money drops out, and if they don't have the money, they can't do it. Even if
this is like the top #1 show on Max.
Yeah.
So
I'm not saying that it's not questionable. Like and I do hope that someone can pick it up, but again, like this is a historical show. There's a lot of costumes. It's on the water. Like it's not the Gilded Age expensive, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, I think there's unfortunate, and this is not defending the powers that be, but without that insight, I think that it does come down to a lot of bottom line things. And what I feel like is remiss, though, of folks to not pay attention to this is in the future, put on my psychic ability here. In the future, you're going to see a lot more shows like this, and you're going to see producers who engage with fandom if they're smart. This is the direction we're going in the age of very, very niche, more and more and more niche streaming options and competition and social media. It's just, there's no, I'm guessing we're all possibly old enough to remember, appointment TV like Friends or Seinfeld or whatever, wherever you got to watch it. Because even though I didn't, I was watching Deep Space Nine, nerd, or playing basketball, nerd. All right. But like you had to watch that to talk to folks. That's over. That's over. And so you're at most going to see legacy things like the House of the Dragon, kind of getting people into the Game of Thrones world. By the way, hated House of the Dragon. Ask me about it later. Don't at me. But yeah, it's so frustrating. I'm like, let's cut out one dragon scene and then let's make our Flag Means Death season 3. I'm down for that as much as I love the dragons. But yeah, I think you're in the future going to see things like this where those parasocial relationships, as we call them, are a lot less parasocial and a lot more kind of symbiotic.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, the showrunner was liking everybody's tweets. I mean, he must have gone through hundreds. And like,
Yeah, he's out of work. He doesn't have anything else to do.
That's true. That's true.
yeah, I never saw Joss Whedon doing that.
well,
And I was on the bronze board. So
The Astroglide social media manager liked my tweet, so I felt like I had achieved peak fandom. I was like, because I had my purple on for the watch along, and they were like, "You understood the assignment." And I called my husband at work. I'm like, "Astroglide liked my tweet." He's like, "What is happening right now?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's amazing."
I just want to say, Laura, smooth.
Well, and I think this is part of the reason that shows like this become important, right? It's the story, it is the characters, it's that connection. And then when you have to look at, and Tanya, kind of going to your point, one of the things that we see a lot more of is streaming is coming out with a lot more niche content. Streaming is coming out with and provides a lot more ability to hit very targeted markets. The question becomes, what's the budget to hit those, and how do you put out volumes enough to find the things where they get it right? And the fandom and the numbers and all show that the show is getting it right. So, Diana, I'm gonna start with you on this one. What is it the show is getting right? Why? What is it for you? What's the story? What's happening?
I think it's really giving me the stories that I want. I mean, the second season was, I think, shortened, and you could sort of see that it could have been more episodes than it was, but you were dealing with a lot of, anytime you make TV, it's not just like one person in the room, and there's a lot of moving parts. But I mean, I do think, obviously the budget's big because of, like they've got this cast and they've got these costumes, but like there's been a lot of really good TV that people get obsessed about for decades that has no budget at all. Like we're talking like 30 years of Doctor Who's, right? I mean, we're talking like I was named after Diana Rigg from the Avengers. Like that had no budget, so like you can make really good TV that's very memorable with little budget. So I'm my fingers are crossed that somebody will pick it up, and we'll get to see Ed and Stede like fake their own deaths or whatever it is, like to fulfill the fanfic goals of like how the story ends, right?
have you seen the whole second season?
Oh yeah, no, I've seen the whole second season, but like they didn't like I feel like there's more, right? And then like they're supposed to go to North Carolina and like be hanged, right? Like they're, and so I want to kind of see like what happens with all of that. But like, I loved that they brought in a bunch more historical pirates that we saw.
All the women
Pirates. Like, so Laura has written like whole books on these people. So since I've read Laura's books, I'm like, oh, I know that one. Oh, I know that one too. And so, it was such a joyful thing. If you know stuff about pirates, to see these pirates, like, or, facsimiles of these pirates. If you don't know anything about pirates, it was a joyful thing to see Minnie Driver like walking around in the world's best corset. Like it was just great. Like it's so fun to watch. And so every single time that you would turn it on and you'd be like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it just be great if they did it? And I love a show like that rather than, a show like, you're watching the last season of Game of Thrones and you're like, none of this makes sense or whatever, like it was like the opposite of that. It was like every time I'm like, I really wish they would, because like there might be another show that would keep Ed and Stede apart for like the entire second season, and they didn't.
Most shows.
Instead, they put like, and then like it would be the whole second season. They'd be looking for each other or whatever. They put them together, and they were like, "Work out your issues, boys." And
I know. One head bump later, and we're fine.
It makes for so much better drama, like to see them, like they were in, Anne Bonny's house, and they were like having a fight about what they'd done to each other. And like I was just like, this is amazing. I was like, this is what I come to TV for. Keep it up. Yeah,
Tanya?
that's it. That's my like long-winded thing. It's a great show. It's funny. It's heartwarming. There is a drag show on the show. They have a drag show on the ship, Calypso's birthday, and they all wear
Ben
green
Smith
makeup,
would have
and
been proud of the makeup.
it's fantastic.
Oh my
So,
God.
like anything you want, like honestly, the ship is almost like one of those houses from Pose, right? Where like all the gay kids go to live. And like Izzy Hands is like the mom of the house.
The daddy.
So I'm gonna let that one sit, Hansi, for now. But I would say like what are they doing right? I think you were going to me, so I'm gonna jump in.
We'll
I
go
think
with that.
just I'm going to say engaging with the fandom, like, and the diversity both in front of the camera and behind the camera in the writer's room is very important, and I'm seeing that. I love the costuming, the creativity that you're seeing. The comedy for me is gold. Like Frenchie is actually probably my favorite character because he's so funny. And the episode where they do the scam, and that's why that's my favorite. When I'm having a bad day, that's what I'm watching. I forget what else I was going to throw in there, but it's just so great to see the fan response and to see powers that be creators like not only respond to the fandom, but embrace it and appreciate it, right? And that was my shout out. I am not a huge Izzy Hands fan.
I wasn't either in the first season.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's a great character, but I'm not like there is a subset of fandom that is like very into Izzy Hands, and like that's fine.
We're gonna
No
make
judgment.
around and let you talk about who your favorite is. We're gonna do
Well,
that
I've just
next.
Okay, all I wanted to shout out was for Con O'Neill that he should get an Emmy for this season 2 performance because it was really, really good. And so there's not just the goofy and the funny, there's great acting. It's much harder to pull off comedy and then pull up those serious beats in the comedy too. And so great stuff from him for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier that, something about like, the creatives engaging with us is kind of like the icing on the cake, but I don't think that we would have loved this show as much as we did, even if Samba was like tweeting at us if the show wasn't any good, but it's like the show is just really, really, really good. And you have this added dimension of like just feeling the love from them and them feeling the love from us. Like it really feels like everyone is genuinely benefiting. Like David Jenkins' heart is full of love and all the crazy stuff that the fans are doing to save the show. And we feel good because he feels good. Like the revenge is a tiny little family, but I feel like the fandom is like just a big, crazy family.
And Samba and his partner had a baby like during this. So then it was like, I feel doubly blessed by all this love. And it's just
so great.
So sweet.
So now I'm going to come to the hard questions where you've got to pick your favorite character. Tell me why. Tanya?
Oh, it's like asking me what's my favorite child. And I'm going to say,
I get to be evil this way, right? I get to watch that torment, that torture, that you give me, and I got to pick one.
Yeah. I guess, I'm going to have to say Stede. Even though I love Frenchie, I've said that, and Jim changed my life. I always say this show didn't make me gay, but Vico Ortiz maybe did a little bit. But like, I'm teasing. But yeah, I say Frenchie I enjoy, but I'm going to say Stede is like who I resonate with, because even though I like to think of myself as a badass, like Bleackbeard, I walk into my classroom and I'm like, hello everyone, let's do class, wee, like that. And so I'm up here and I want everybody
as a class.
Yeah, I want everybody to have their best life and to meet their potential. And I think and I have that mom energy. And I think Stede is very much the mom of this crew.
Laura, who's yours?
People always ask me who my favorite pirate is, and I say it's like picking a favorite child. But so I will just give the same answer that I give when people ask me that question, which is Cheng Yisao, who they call Zheng Yisao in this series because there's 2 different Chinese pronunciations and it doesn't really matter. But getting to
The
see
Pirate Queen.
the Pirate Queen. So Chang
She's
Sao is by
awesome.
any conceivable metric that you can think of to measure how good a pirate is. She is the greatest pirate who ever lived of all time. And up until now, her biggest Western media exposure was as like a bit part in the third Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which was probably the most accurate part of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, is that she was a pirate in it. So I love those, but documentary, they ain't. But just getting to see Cheng Yisao, the greatest pirate who ever lived. I mean, there are so many stories that have not been told and have not been told enough. And she's just kind of like person number one in line. Like, I want a spin-off series with Cheng Yisao
I love to see that.
for
I mean, they could do
forever.
all the women they introduced in the second season. That would be amazing.
I just love when she like shows up and she's just like, girl, how are you? And I'm just like, oh, like, again, it's like, it's not, and I wasn't sure at first with how they portrayed her because she's so stinking good. And I think that's part of the problem. Like, if she was as good as being a pirate as she actually is, like, she would have, there'd be like no more show. Like, it's like, and Chang shows up and she kills everyone and she takes all the money and she goes away, and that, and it wouldn't be any fun. But just her machinations and her, you know, relationship with Auntie and her culture and her, you know,
I love Dan.
with Oluwande. Yeah, I mean, it's just,
I like that she was just like competent. Like she would just go and be like, you could die or you could join me. And like she doesn't raise her voice. She never gets like angry. She's just like, this is the way it is.
there's also a wonderful part where there's like a 3-man sword fight, and it's Stede and Ed and her, and they're fighting, and then Ed and Stede are like making up, and she's the only one fighting, and she's just like, guys! It's like, I have felt that deep in my soul, like as a woman, like trying to corral people, just be like, guys! So she's incredible, and yeah, I'll stick with her forever.
Well, Hansi.
Yeah. Let's see.
I can't see him. Oh,
I don't. Oh, there he is.
There we go.
And yes, I'm groping him as hard as I possibly can. He was really nice about it. I love him. I hated the character in the first season, and then in the second season, his redemption was so incredible, and it also hit me in a very personal way because he was at a point where his body had been so mutilated, and he was just like, I'm ready to die. I'm done. And my husband died last February, and that was the same thing. He was like, I don't want to go through radiation treatment. Let me go. And so him doing that, it was just like, yeah, I felt it.
Diana.
Yeah, so she has a very small part, but it's Mary. It's Mary Bonnet. I just loved her, and I think, you know, I was loving the show. I was loving the romance. And then when we finally met Mary, I was like, this is why this show is so good. And they did not skip over these hard questions. And they went back and they go, well, who is Mary Bonnet? Like, what is her life? And there's this great part where, you know, Stede is like, oh, I'm going to make it right. I'm going to come back home. And he gets back home and she like does not want him there because she's like made a life for herself and she's told everyone he's dead and like she's moving on with her life and she's happy. Like she's super happy. And she goes and talks to her friend. And it's the actress Kristen
Johnson.
Yeah, Kirsten Johnson from like Third Rock from the Sun. And she's like this like grand old dame. She's got like an eye patch. Like you're kind of wondering like what her backstory is, that she's like
great.
And she's like, I don't know. I just, you know, like I wish, you know, he was dead. And the woman like smokes and she goes, murder is a natural cause. And I was just sitting there like thinking about the way, you know, she didn't have an option to get divorced. And back when women didn't have options to get divorced, sometimes men would die mysteriously because Kirsten Johnson is correct and murder is a natural cause.
yeah, but the piano, the lion, like the way.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, what happened then is ridiculous because it's like a very broad comedy. But Like again, for really personal reasons, like Mary's character spoke to me, and like she's not a bad person, and she's just trying to live like her best life with her kids, and she knows that that best life is not with Stede. And I just love that they didn't cheap out. They didn't make her into a horrible person that like Stede had to run away from. Like it was just not the right marriage for either of them. And I just thought that was like really beautiful. But like of the pirates, Olawande, like I just love him. He's so cuddly.
When she asked Stede, like, if he's in love and what's her name, and he says Ed, and she's like, that's wonderful. There's no hesitation. There's, it's just.
Yeah, that actress, she just did a wonderful job. And like she had this small part, but like, she looms so large over Stede and his feelings in the first season that like finally seeing her, even though she's in like one episode, like you really get the sense of.
I was surprised how many people cosplayed her at DragonCon. I was really shocked when we did the meetup. I was so many, and I was like, that's interesting.
Well, there's very few women, right? It's like Jackie and Mary. Those are your options in the first season. So
we've only, I know, just barely scratched the surface, even out of 2 seasons, right? However, I'm going to throw one last question out there, which is, and everybody gets their own answer. What's the one thing that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure we get in, whether it's about the story, the series, the actors, whatever it is that makes your little hearts happy? Laura?
Gosh, I mean, this fandom is so intertwined with like my friendships with people like IRL and online, and watching something and then texting someone to be like, David Jenkins absolutely read that one fic by Model Mop. Like, there's no way this didn't come right out of that fan fiction. And I'm just so grateful that things like this exist. I think, Diana's right about Mary. She does loom so large. And I think she has one of the best lines in the whole show, which is like, we only have this one life. And I want it to be a good one. And I think that has sort of inspired so many of us. And I mean, what I love most about pirates is that they, in particular, I mean, my area of study is pirate women. So, they looked at what was expected of them and like what they were supposed to be as a woman in whatever time period they lived. What they all have in common is just rejecting what society said they had to be and do, and then forging their own path. And I think this show was a really beautiful example of that happening, both in the show and in the fandom. And just, pirates are outlaws. Why wouldn't they all be super queer and like lovely to each other? Like it just goes back to how we opened up. Like it did not happen. Like, it could have happened. And just to choose like love and to choose joy at every point is so unusual. And it's just so lovely. And the show is just so singular in that it doesn't, I mean, characters do die. But death is not played. Right, but like it's not played for effect. It's not like a lazy shortcut, like, oh, let's make this dramatic by killing somebody off. Like, it really just goes to show that like having a show revolve around like love and acceptance can be hilarious and cutting edge and beautiful. And I just can't wait to see what season 3 is, because I don't believe that there is a world where season 3 is not going to happen because of the incredible, everything that's brought the show to where it is and this fandom to where it is makes me believe that we will get this, the end of the story.
Hansi?
What was the question again?
What's the one thing we haven't dove into that we absolutely have to touch on before we get out of here?
Oh God. I don't know. I don't know. I just think the fan response is insane, and the billboard in Times Square. I got to see it, like on the Earth Cam, because I just wasn't going to make Times Square. It's like too many people. But I did the Earth Cam and watched it for a couple minutes. And when the R flag means death billboard lit up, I was like, yay! It's just, I feel included, and I think that that's really meaningful and rare.
Diana, what's the one thing we haven't touched on?
Well, I just wanted to talk just like very briefly about the fact that, in the first season, it's like Stede is this like incompetent pirate, right? Who needs like Bleackbeard to do everything for him. But in the second season, I thought they did a really good job of showing that, yes, Stede has learned some like pirating skills, but most of the things that end up happening that help the revenge in that season are the people skills that he taught his crew. He was very respectful of his crew. He fed them. He didn't beat them or whip them, like the British Navy would. Like he paid them. And then when they are in a situation where they're being boarded by these pirates who want to kill them, they like very calmly talk to them about like maybe that they just have a bad boss and they should consider maybe not working for their bad boss. And like that is like straight up Stede Bonnet like 101, right? Like he's all like, let's have a company meeting about like what's happening and like let's put it to a vote. And
Talk about it as a crew.
yeah, he was like teaching them to work together. And what did they do? They didn't actually get out their swords. They like talked to the evil pirates and like talked them down. And I was like, you know what? It's not, Bleackbeard's skills that are necessarily saving the day here. It's Stede's skills. And they really did a great job of showing that like maybe he's not a pirate, but he brings something to the table, that it's not like one-sided.
Tanya?
Yeah, a few things. I'll follow up on that and just say Stede puts in the time, like the details of reading the story, the stories, and the little boy. I'm a little boy. My legs are sticks, right? Like those little funny details about reading the stories. But I wanted to say like the I don't know, like sensory elements. So the music is fantastic.
The
music choices, the score, the pop culture music. So The Chain by Fleetwood Mac was one of the most streamed songs, I think, last year because of the role it plays in this show. The food. So the cake, right? The marmalade, and then things like just loving and enjoying food and tea, and Roach's role in that. And then the second season was like soup. It was like they were obsessed with soup. I don't know why. But those details
they had like
that,
the dumpling soups on
Yeah.
what's her face's ship. That's why
Yeah. Well, and what was great about
Y'all are making me hungry.
yeah, it was great, like that kind of those details of you can appreciate the finer things, like and that would include relationship building,
Dining,
but
not just
Yeah.
eating, but dining.
yes, it's pageant. You feast, you eat first with the eyes, etc. But even the costumes and all of those details like really add to making the show outstanding. So I hope that they get some recognition for that, for set design and costumes and things like that. Yeah, that'd be great.
The costumes tell such a story. Like Jim, like there's a whole plot in the first season where Ed and Stede dress up as each other. And it's amazing. There's like an entire plot that revolves around a coat in the second season. Like the costumes are a story into themselves. They're really beautiful. So I'm not surprised, Hansi, that like Dragon Con was like all about the Our Flag Means Death cosplay this year. It's such
I saw a ton of it last year. I expect we will again this year.
Yes, oh yeah, even more.
My favorite is when I'm wearing this, and I had my hair blonde last year for cons for Stede Bonnet, was people would be like, Stede Bonnet, and I'd be like, oh, you've heard of me, right? And you just quote lines at each other, back and forth all day, and it's just so much fun.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming in to dive into Our Flag Means Death, and I hope that hopefully they get there at least one more sail at sea. But before we get out of here,
Come here. Leave.
let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys. Tanya, website, social media, all the good stuff.
You can find me on the revenge eating through the stores of marmalade. No, you can find me on Twitter or whatever it is now at AK Nerd Fighting. AK, N, and F are all capitalized. I'm also pretty findable on Facebook and Instagram, but that's mostly pictures of my cats. So maybe don't do that. You can also find my book wherever books are sold, Fandom Acts of Kindness, and keep an eye out for our forthcoming book about our flag. So that's coming soon.
Laura?
I'm also on Twitter. It's my name. I didn't really understand the assignment when I started Twitter. So it's at Laura Duncombe 1. You can also find my books wherever books are sold. A Pirate's Life for She and Pirate Women.
They're great. Buy them.
Thank you. You can check them out from the library. Just learn about pirate ladies. And I think that's it. I have 3 small children, so I'm not like the most onlineable, but I love to talk to people on Twitter about pirates. It's like my favorite part of the whole day, and the only reason I'm still on the hellscape that is Twitter. So I'm
Hansi?
Hansi Oppenheimer, and you can find me on pretty much any social media as Squee Projects.
And Diana?
I'm Diana Peterfreund. I'm the only Diana Peterfreund. So if you write that anywhere online, you will be directed to a place that you can find me. And my
There's
books.
another Oppenheimer that's more famous than I am.
Is there? I
Really?
don't. What?
Not quite as explosive and disruptive, though.
Ew. Like a doll with blonde hair.
And I'm still managing to be aboard somehow or another miraculously. But I've been your host, Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, speculative-fiction-academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course, here at Continual. And apparently it's late and I do not have enough caffeine. We'll see y'all again soon.